Hello, I am Olympia D, 105.3 RNB, and today we would like to introduce you to Radio One's Community Mental Health Series. It's our initiative for mental and behavioral health in partnership with the Mecklenburg County Alcoholic Beverage and Control Board. This will be a space where you will find hope, resources, and also assistance. Now, for the month of February, our topic will be a very sensitive one. And this month, we're discussing domestic violence and also relationship wellness. And we're going to provide you with some tools to help you navigate your relationships. Plus, we'll get you answers to the most sought after questions as it concerns domestic violence and relationship wellness. And some of our guests for today will be Ms. Leanna Pai. She is the Director of Sexual Trauma Relationship Center and Lake Norman Services for Safe Alliance. And also, later on in the show, we'll be talking to A.W. Burgess. He is the founder of Family Mankind. And right now, we would like to bring out Miss Pai. How are you doing?
Hi, Olympia. Thanks so much for having me.
No doubt. And one of the things about domestic violence, it is a topic that most people kind of shy away from. And it's not a topic that's publicly talked about because of the shame factor. Can you tell us about Safe Alliance and how you guys are helping domestic violence victims?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Safe Alliance is a nonprofit organization here in Mecklenburg County, and it's our mission to provide hope and healing to those impacted by domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. So, we provide emergency housing at our domestic violence shelter. We also provide legal assistance through our Victim Assistance Court program. We have counseling and advocacy, which is kind of like case management at our Sexual Trauma Resource Center and our Survivor Resource Center. We also operate the 24/7 Greater Charlotte Hope Line, where survivors can call in at any time. We're also proud to be the administrative lead of Charlotte Mecklenburg's first Family Justice Center, the Umbrella Center. And at Safe Alliance, we believe that everyone has the right to build a safe and violence-free life for themselves and for their families.
Right. And you talk about building that safe environment. How prevalent is domestic violence and how does it impact many families?
Yeah, it's definitely all too prevalent. And since it happens inside the home, we really don't hear about it as much, like you were saying. But 1 in 3 women will be impacted by domestic violence or sexual assault in their lifetime. And in 2024, Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department reported to nearly 38,000 calls for service that was related to domestic violence. And that is a 2.5% increase as compared to their numbers in 2023. Safe Alliance specifically served over 8,000 clients last year, but we know that there are many, many more community members that are experiencing abuse and that could use support.
Right. Now, when we talk about domestic violence, a lot of people think that it may only be physical, but there are different levels and there are different types of abuse. Can you explain those to us and give us some examples of that as well?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Domestic violence doesn't always look the same, and each situation really does look a lot different. There are certain kind of patterns that you might see, though. So the abusive partner will try to establish or gain power and control through a lot of different methods and a lot of different ways. And it typically cycles and it'll escalate over time. So aside from the physical and sexual violence that we maybe automatically assume is part of domestic violence, there's a lot of different tactics. So isolation is a big one, creating a wedge between you and your friends and family. So you don't have a strong support system. They become the only person that you can lean on. There's a lot of control about who you see and where you go, and oftentimes like minimizing or denying your experience, like making light of the abuse. They might blame you or tell you that it's your fault, and they definitely use intimidation in a lot of ways. So maybe there's not a direct threat, but they might leave their gun on the table during an argument, or they might start hurting your pet or threatening any shared children. Also, a lot of times threatening to have custody taken away from you. So those are some of the other tactics, but emotional abuse is also really common. So that would include name calling, putting down, making you think that you're crazy, or making you feel guilty. really any of those things that are going to start to erode your feeling of self-confidence in yourself. And I would say financial and economic abuse is also a really, really powerful tool for power and control, and can often be the reason why someone stays in an abusive relationship, even once they realize that it's abusive. So that could be, preventing someone from getting or keeping a job. It could be making you ask for money or for like an allowance. But anything where you don't have free access to your family's resources would be considered that like financial or economic abuse.
hmm Now, sometimes when you're in the heat of the moment, you don't realize, hey, this is an abusive
Mhm.
situation. Can you talk to us about some of those red flags that maybe you might experience when you first start dating someone that is like, that's a no-no. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say at the start of new relationships, it's extremely hard to tell if someone will later become abusive. Abusers aren't really like wearing a name tag that says, I'm an abuser, I'm going to do this, right? And a lot of times, abusive people will appear like ideal partners at the beginning stages of an abusive relationship. Um, the signs don't always appear overnight, because a lot of times that abusive person is really trying to establish what a great partner they are, how wonderful they are, to really kind of establish a foundation of sorts for them to pull off of. Um, I would say when you're thinking about signs, it really comes down to the basic: do you have the freedom to live your life the way you want to? Can you decide who you spend time with and what you do? Do you feel physically safe? Do you feel loved and supported and emotionally safe? Do you have access to your family's resources? Everything kind of boils down to that, because there are so many different specific examples that we could get into.
Mhm.
But when it comes down to it, it's, do you have the freedom to live your life the way you want to?
Right. And a lot of people may say that will never happen to me. I will never find myself in that kind of situation. But it's a lot of people do find themselves in those type of situations. But who is probably the most likely to find themselves in that type of domestic violence situation?
Yeah, so it's really important to Safe Alliance that we acknowledge and we know that anyone can experience domestic violence. It happens to people of all genders, all races, all sexualities, religions, ethnicities, incomes. I will say that statistically, that women ages 18 to 34 are generally going to experience the highest rate of domestic violence, but we know that this can happen in any sort of situation.
Right. And, often victims of DV, they have to develop a safety plan. Can you break down what is a safety plan? And just in case someone finds themselves in a situation or in a relationship where they have to just go.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're thinking about it kind of philosophically, a safety plan is that bridge between the fear and the freedom. So we're offering survivors a clear path forward in moments of crisis and maybe beyond that.
Mhm.
In actuality and logistics, a safety plan is something that's personalized to you. It's actionable strategies that are designed to lower certain risks of harm. So any sort of plan, just like every sort of situation, is going to be a lot different. But you want to make sure that your plan answers a few key questions. So the questions that you would ask yourself would be, where can I go to stay safe? Like, where can you physically go that will be physically safe? Who can I call for help? Whether that's a friend, a family, someone that you trust. What important items should I discreetly pack? So that could be your driver's license or your social security card or things like that. When is the safest time to leave? That's going to be different for everyone. Trying to figure out, when can I leave that's going to cause the least amount of risk for me when I'm actually ready. But then also, how can you stay safe until you're ready to leave? These questions might seem simple, but they're in actuality really complicated, and they hold the power to help survivors think through their next steps clearly, especially during a time when they're really fearful and overwhelmed. I would say that our Greater Charlotte Hope Line can walk someone through creating one of these personalized safety plans. And In fact, Safe Alliance last year created over 14,000 safety plans, and each was completely unique as the survivor and the situation that it was designed for.
Right. Now, we talk about the safety plans. Sometimes victims of domestic violence, you have to leave in a hurry. Can you talk
Mhm.
to our listeners about that go bag in the moment? You already have
Mhm.
everything ready to go. You can get out the door. Can you talk to the
Mhm.
listeners about the go bag?
Generally, if you're going to make a go bag, my number one suggestion is to make sure you're keeping it in a place that's not going to cause suspicion, right? If you pack a go bag and your abusive partner sees that and thinks that that's unusual, that could be a way that you're actually putting yourself at greater risk. So make sure that you've found a place to put the go bag that, one, will always be accessible to you, but two, isn't necessarily going to put you in further harm if someone were to find it.
Right.
I would also say the things that you want to think about in your go bag are any legal documents, of course. So identification, driver's license, any of those important documents that you need if you're able to get those, any sort of money that you have, whether that's cash or cards, generally something that's not connected to the abuser. That'll be an independent source of income. And you kind of do also, I encourage people to think about what comfort items you want. Is there like a sweatshirt that's really going to like help you feel safe and comfortable? Is there, a couple of things that you just wouldn't want to leave home without? And also consider about, do you have children that might need to be coming with you? And what is the plan for them? And do they have what they need as well?
Well, definitely. Now, this one is a very tricky question right here. What should you do if you think a friend or even a neighbor is being abused? How can we help?
Yeah. Yeah, that one can be really hard because, again, like you said, we don't talk about this very much and people don't know how to bring it up. So I would say gently bring up your concerns in a moment of calm, right? So when your friend or your neighbor is stressed out, maybe not the greatest time to bring that up to them. They won't be able to think clearly or understand. They might not understand where you're coming from to try to be helpful. But I would say gently bring up your concerns in a moment of calm. Listen, but don't force them to talk about things that they're not uncomfortable, right? Reminding them that this isn't their fault and that you're there for them no matter what, whenever they are ready to reach out for support, is super helpful. Like I mentioned, abusers worked really hard to isolate their partners. So your friend or your neighbor knowing that you believe them and you're going to be there for them, those are like the main ways that you can be helpful. And that is really powerful to just know someone is there.
And studies have shown that domestic violence victims sometimes stay with their abuser or even
Mhm.
leave and then go back to their abuser. Why do you think that happens?
Well, yeah. So, like on average, it takes about 7 attempts before a survivor will leave an abusive relationship for good.
Mhm.
There's really good reason behind that. I know for us on the outside, it doesn't seem logical. It doesn't seem to make too much sense, but we've got to think about like that power and control that's gained in an abusive relationship through emotional manipulation, right? Abusers are often creating a really strong emotional pull to stay. They're starting that relationship being the ideal perfect partner. They might say that their wellness relies on you. They might even say that they'll hurt themselves or somebody else if you leave, right? And so that fear to leave becomes great when you're taking on responsibility of someone else's actions. But emotions aside, there's some really real logistical issues that come with leaving an abusive relationship. So there's always the fear of retaliation or, the potential harm when you're trying to leave. And a lot of logistics like getting your legal documents, establishing a separate bank account, finding a safe place to go, making arrangements if you had shared children. All of these things have to be planned out pretty far in advance. If an abuser has slowly establish complete control over all of these aspects of your life, it's not going to be easy to do this undetected either. And so if that ever comes up and gets confronted, that's going to add to some of those power and control dynamics of, well, maybe it is better if I stay. If I stay, I won't die. If I stay, my kids won't die. I will be safe. If I stay is sometimes the logic behind that, right? And
Right.
so a lot of times we're thinking about those additional safety risks. And to be quite frank, a lot of times survivors have to choose between continued abuse or going without shelter or leaving their entire community all at once.
I understand. And sometimes that can be a really big factor for them because it's like you said, it brings you back to the isolation piece where, hey, I'm going to be completely without my family, or I may have to struggle where they haven't struggled before.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Now, we talked about the red flags of a bad relationship, but what are some of the green flags to let us know that we're in a healthy one?
Yeah, I love talking about green flags.
Yeah.
I would say communication is a really big green flag. You can talk about anything, even the tough stuff, and you know you're going to be heard, right? Not just about sharing, but respecting each other's thoughts and feelings. I think respect is another big one, right? Like you genuinely value each other for who you are. You don't have to change who you are in order to, be loved. You're free to be yourself. And that's what makes it so special when someone respects you for who you are. Equality, I think, too, is a really big one. So your team, decisions are made together. Everybody's voice matters. No one's opinion matters more than someone else's, and you work things out together. And then I would say also definitely consent, right? Like you're comfortable having honest conversations about physical and emotional boundaries. There's always a mutual yes. You feel safe to express what's okay and what's not okay. No means no. Maybe also means no, right? Yes means yes. And feeling comfortable to say no and knowing that's going to be respected, huge green flag. I think the last one that I kind of think about is boundaries. Kind of goes along with consent, right? You support each other's need for space, whether it's alone time or just time with your friends or doing your own thing. You can talk openly about what works for you, what doesn't work for you. But I think ultimately, healthy relationships are built on trust, understanding, and care. And all of these green flags can create connection and growth within a relationship.
Right. And, we talk a lot about the abuser, but we also have to remember that in some of these situations, there are children that are involved and they need help as well. And that's where we bring in Mr. A.W. Burgess, and he's here with his organization, Family Mankind. That's where they come into place, and that's where they really, really shine. How are you doing, Mr. Burgess?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Olivia.
Great. Thank you. All right. So talk to me about Family Mankind.
Family Mankind, we were established. I had written a book called The Family Man, and it was solutions to permanently eradicate domestic violence. And basically, it was my story and journey of how I became an abuser, domestic violence speaking, and but also the journey of how to get well, how to get help, how to go through therapy, how to get into group sessions, and how to really surround yourself with positive people. And it basically walked my way out of domestic violence situation. But of course, that comes at a price. It comes through losing valuable friendships, tearing up relationships with people that are good people. But because of my insecurities and just different way of thinking and processing things in a relationship, it always led to violence.
Mhm. Can you talk to us about how violence impacts the children in those relationships?
It's significant because when children are exposed to violence of any sort, but especially domestic violence, they too become at a greater risk of becoming an abuser or becoming a victim and accepting the abuse, especially when they see a loved one, their mother, um, not leave, not call the police, not do anything except take the abuse. And so from a child perspective, oftentimes they blame themselves, or they go to school and become bullies or become victims of bullying. So it's a great impact. It leads to drug use. It leads to alcohol abuse, in with children speaking.
Mhm. What is the best way to reach a child who may be suffering in silence? Because a lot of times the children, they don't have a voice in this situation. What's the best way to reach out to that child and to get that child the help that they need?
I think with the children that we've dealt with, it's always them knowing that they have security with us. So I think with children, you have to be almost a security blanket where they can trust expressing themselves, because oftentimes they're put on mute. You know, think about us as adults. You know, we're told what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas. We're told snitches get stitches and ditches. So it's one of those things where we got to make sure that our children are free to express themselves regardless of what they see and hear from mom and dad.
Right. And Mr. Burgess, you talked about breaking that cycle. How can you break the cycle of abuse so that it doesn't keep repeating over and over, generation to generation?
You have to get help. You have to reach out to someone, whether it's church, whether it's the police. It's got to be somebody in a safe place that keeps you safe. Places like Safe Alliance exist for that very reason. Domestic violence is a very dangerous activity that people experience every day, and it's even, believe it or not, more dangerous for the people who are coming to help. So it's one of those situations where, you know, as y'all talked about the go bag, you've got to really have a strategy, an exit strategy, because it's one of those things. And I can speak about that personally because I know what my sentiments were when I was the aggressor, the abuser. You can really turn a bad situation into a tragedy. And so it's one of those scenarios where you have to have a security blanket with respect to family members and or friends or neighbors. You really have to have a safety plan.
Right. Now, we were talking about, the go bag, and also sometimes the people that come to help sometimes are the ones that get hurt. What would be your solution? As I talked to Ms. Pai earlier, if you have a friend or if you have a neighbor that might be in a DV situation or that you think might be abused, what would be your advice as well?
I think it's suggestions. I think it's letting folks know, hey, I don't know if this is what you're going through, but if you are, here's a recommendation. Because I think oftentimes people don't know what to do, or they, as Leanna effectively said, when you are tied into emotional abuse, or you got children, or you got financial abuse going on where you don't have an alternative, or you've got other family members that say, "Hey, don't bring that over here."
Right.
It's there's a reason why 1 in 7 women go back, and it's tied to those reasons. I mean, you fell in love with somebody, you give people. I mean, my girlfriend at the time, my wife, gave me benefit of the doubt so many times, and so the bottom line is that you have to have a game plan, a strategy, a safe strategy, because I'm a salesperson, so manipulation game is on a million with me. And I think that's what, most abusers, they don't look like abusers, they don't sound like abusers, but the manipulation, the emotional abuse is so real, that's why a lot of women choose to stay.
But what sparked that change for you? What made you wake up one day and say, hey, this is something that I have to change?
I would be a lonely man. I realized that if I didn't change, no one was going to love me and or love me long. Because again, you can, and this is what abusers do. We go from the next person to the next person, thinking that, oh, it's their fault, or they didn't really get me, or, again, I didn't see a problem with the abuse because, again, this is my normalcy. And so that was the why. Is I figured that if I could be a linchpin as far as being able to change the thought process in mostly men. Now I deal with women as well, a lot of LGBTQ community people as well. Um, if I can be a mentalist and touch the emotions of people and have them really touch their conscious, then they'll change. And most times people don't have anybody that even talks to them about the abuse. And so
Mhm.
we give folks an outlet, allowing them to express what makes them tick. And then obviously, being a man enough to say, well, if I can change, you can change, but here's what you got to do. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of people, when they know that there's an example or examples of people who are just like them or worse, um, they can really believe in the change. And I think that that's my why is to make sure that victims, or don't, survivors, I should say, don't have to have this continuous abuse for the rest of their life. Because I know women who have been abused their entire life.
Mhm.
It's extremely sad that couldn't get the help that they needed.
Right. And there are going to be a lot of people that's going to see this recording. I want to know for a man that's out there that may be an abuser, or a woman, because we do have some female
Mhm.
abusers as well. What do you want them to know? What is that little nugget that you can give them right now that could potentially change their life and make them want to just, just do right?
I would say legacy. I would say that if this is how you wish to be remembered, as a human being on this planet,
Mhm.
that you have destroyed lives, you destroyed your own life. You really need to contact, whether it's Family Mankind or other organizations, church. You really need to get the help that is going to benefit you as a human being, and as a family member, as a friend. I realized I destroyed some incredible friendships with women, um, and tainted my relationship with my wife. I mean, I've been married 30 years, but I know that that has played into our relationship,
Mhm.
and even with my kids. And I don't want that to be my legacy. I don't want my friends and others who are experiencing domestic violence to have that become their legacy, because I tell you, it's a terrible thing to have your wife or your children know that you're an abuser.
Right. And Ms. Pai, I want to come back to you really quick because, again, there are going to be some victims out there that are going to see this. What advice would you give them? What type of resource could you give them as well to help them if they are in that particular situation?
Mhm. I would say the main thing for victims is not to be afraid to reach out for help, even if all you want is more information or someone to talk to. Our Greater Charlotte Hope Line is a fantastic resource. It can just be a starting point. It doesn't have to be um, immediate or anything. It takes time, like we've been saying, to figure out how to move forward. And so you can call the Greater Charlotte Hope Line. It's 980-771-HOPE, which is 980-771-4673. That's available 24/7 for you to call. And if it's a friend or a neighbor, I would say, like Mr. Burgess was saying, sometimes people don't even realize because they've grown up in this, right? And I don't think that anyone, in my experience anyways, no one has ever been offended by someone expressing that they care for them and they just want to look out for them and make sure that they're okay. And so I would encourage victims and also people who are concerned that someone might be affected by this, that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to check in on each other and show each other that you care.
Awesome. You guys have given some very good information today. And I thank you guys for being so candid and also so open to share your story and to share your resources. And again, I think it's a great platform. Do you guys have any parting words, Mr. Burgess?
I would say, to those families, individuals who are experiencing domestic violence, reach out, to us at Family Mankind, or reach out to Safe Alliance. There's no shame in getting help. There's no shame in, basically bowing down to what you can't beat. And I'll be the first to tell you, I just always used to tell my girlfriend, I'll change, but with no help, how do you change? And so, we're here, just like Safe Alliance. We're here to help. We're here to not judge people. Like I said, I've experienced it on both sides, and I want to make sure that people have outlets. You know, we help the survivors, we help the children, we help obviously the abusers, but we want to make sure that people know that there is organizations out there that truly do have their best interests, and that their mental wellness changes for the better. You know, your legacy is really riding on it.
All right. And Ms. Pai, any parting words?
Oh, Mr. Burgess said it so well, I think. It's just that there is no shame in reaching out for help. We all go through struggles. We all go through hard times. And I think this exact same sentiments apply. If there are plenty of organizations, Safe Alliance and Mr. Burgess' organization included, that are here to help without judgment, that are available and accessible and confidential.
Definitely. All right. This concludes our community mental health series. I just want to say thank you to both of you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Definitely. And we will continue on with our initiative for mental and behavioral health in partnership with Mecklenburg County Alcoholic Beverage and Control Board. I am Olympia D, 105.3 R&B. Make sure you continue to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok on all social media platforms. And again, thank you for joining us and have a good day.
Indeed.